Let's just, for a moment, forget everything you think you know about biology. Today, we're diving into a pretty radical idea. What if life isn't just a chemical reaction, but a symphony of vibrations? And our guide on this wild journey is one of nature's most amazing architects, the bee.
Okay, so let's start with the central mystery. Just think about it. You've got a beehive, 50,000 individuals, all working together in perfect, seamless harmony. They build this incredible, intricate architecture. They manage the temperature. They make complex group decisions. And there's no boss. No one's in charge. So how on earth is that possible? How does this incredibly smart, coherent behavior just emerge from what should be total chaos?
Well, to even begin to answer that, we've got to look at where our usual way of thinking kind of hits a wall. Mainstream biology, with its focus on genes and molecules, it's super powerful, for sure. But it leaves some really big, profound questions totally unanswered.
I mean, look at some of these puzzles. You've got a bee larva, right? It's got the same exact genes as its sisters, but somehow it can become a worker or a queen. That decision isn't just in its DNA. Or, get this, an axolotl can regrow a perfectly formed leg, every bone, every muscle in the right place. How do those cells remember the blueprint? These are huge examples of pattern memory and coordination that simple chemical signals just can't explain.
So here's the bottom line. Genetics and chemistry, they're absolutely essential parts of the story, but they don't seem to be the whole story. It's like they describe the violins and the trumpets, but they don't tell us anything about the conductor or the music itself. It really feels like there's a missing layer of information, some kind of guiding principle that's organizing the entire system.
And here's the kicker. This new idea, it isn't really new at all. It's actually a forgotten piece of scientific history, a field paradigm that scientists were exploring 100 years ago. Turns out, they were already thinking along these lines. So, way back in the 1920s, a scientist named Alexander Gurwitch saw evidence of what he called mitogenetic fields that seemed to guide how cells divide. Then, by the 40s, Harold Burr over at Yale was meticulously mapping these things he called L fields, basically electrodynamic blueprints that existed around organisms before their physical bodies even formed. But then, the discovery of DNA's double helix changed everything. The entire scientific world shifted its focus to the molecular level, and these big, field-based theories just they got pushed aside.
So what happened to all that research? It's not that it was disproven, it was just sidelined. The tools simply didn't exist back then to connect these massive, overarching fields to what was happening at the molecular level. So the huge questions these scientists were asking were just left hanging, waiting for a new way to look at the problem.
And that brings us to today, and to a new framework that kind of picks up right where those early pioneers left off. It's called the Codex Resonance Framework, and it proposes that life communicates through a totally universal language, the language of resonance.
Okay, so the first big idea here is something called vibrational entrainment. Just picture a bunch of musicians all starting to play at their own tempo, but slowly they all lock into the same single beat. That's entrainment. In nature, it happens with vibrations. For example, with some wasp species, the queen drums her antenna on the brood cells, a steady, rhythmic signal that literally shapes the development of the larvae inside, telling them to become workers. It's a physical vibration acting like a developmental command.
And this isn't some abstract theory, right? We can actually measure these frequencies. In honeybees, they have what's called the shaking signal. A worker bee literally vibrates its body against another bee at around 16 hertz. This isn't a direct order. It's more like a broadcast signal that just ramps up the other bee's activity level, getting them motivated to go out and forage. It's a colony-wide let's get to work call, transmitted at a very specific frequency. So where do all these signals travel? Through the hive itself. And this leads to the next cool concept, resonant architecture. Those perfect hexagonal cells in a honeycomb, they're not just about saving wax or being strong. That specific geometry is an incredible medium for transmitting vibrations. The structure isn't just a passive house, it's an active part of the communication network. It's like a concert hall, perfectly designed to carry the colony's music. And the last piece of this puzzle, it might be the most wild one yet. It's water. Yep, water. We usually think of the water in our cells as just a boring solvent, but it's so much more. Near the surfaces of proteins and membranes, it forms this structured, almost gel-like matrix. Think of it like a liquid crystal. And this structured water can actually hold and transmit information. It's like a cellular memory stick for these resonant frequencies. So let's just pause and put this side by side, okay? The traditional mechanistic view sees life as a kind of chemical machine run by a digital code, our DNA. The resonance view, on the other hand, sees life more like a musical instrument, where information is carried in harmonic signals transmitted through resonant geometry and received by an active medium, like that structured water. It's a complete shift in metaphor, from a machine to music.
This all leads us to this really beautiful way of looking at the hive. It's not just a collection of 50,000 individual bees. It's a living orchestra, playing a complex and beautiful symphony of vibrations.
So, how does this orchestra actually play? Well, the individual bees are the musicians. Each one is contributing its own signals: wing beats, shaking, even tiny electrostatic charges. The honeycomb, that's the concert hall, perfectly shaped to amplify and transmit all those signals. The music is the collective field of vibrations they all create together. And the result? The symphony. That coordinated, intelligent behavior of the entire hive acting as one single superorganism.
Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. This resonance framework doesn't throw out what we already know about biology. It doesn't replace it, it enhances it. The idea is that our genetics and our chemistry are all operating within a much larger guiding context provided by these resonant fields. It's the physical scaffold that organizes all the molecular players and tells them when and where to act.
So what does all of this mean for the future? Well, by shifting our focus from just the individual parts to the resonant whole, we open up completely new ways of understanding life itself.
This new perspective could help us tackle some of biology's biggest and oldest challenges. I mean, how does a complex organism build itself from a single cell? How does it regenerate a lost limb with perfect accuracy? These are questions that have stumped scientists for centuries. By starting to think in terms of resonance, we can approach these problems from a totally new angle, one that combines physics, information theory, and biology.
And so we're left with this one final, kind of mind-blowing thought. What if we've been looking at life through too narrow a lens this whole time? What if life isn't fundamentally a machine made of chemicals, but a symphony of information played on an instrument that's been tuned by the laws of resonance? The bees in their hive certainly seem to be telling us that it is. Thanks for exploring this with us.